Hey, good evening, everyone. Keith Stevens with PG&E. I'm the Chief Communications Officer and the Public Information Officer for these last several public safety power shutoff events. Thank you for being here tonight. Made a lot of significant progress today. We're going to be happy to share that with you here in a moment. Rick's covered safety here in the room, so everybody knows what to do in case there's any safety issues. Remind everybody that we do have a microphone. We have a line for folks dialing in around the state. Obviously, our service territory is large, 40-plus counties, so we want to make sure everybody can hear your questions. So we'll be bringing mics to you. So tonight's lineup, much like it's been for the last few nights, we have Scott Strenfeld, our principal meteorologist. He'll start us off with a survey of what's been going on the last kind of 24 hours because we got some good news overnight. He'll also give us a little bit of a lookout here for the next week or so. Mark Quinlan is our incident commander. He will give an operational update. And finally, we'll have some final closing remarks by Bill Johnson, our president and CEO of PG&E Corporation. Before I get started and turn it over to Scott, I just want to recognize Emily, who's here tonight, providing sign language translation for us, and we appreciate her being here tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
Thank you, Keith. Scott Strenfeld, PG&E Meteorology. Excuse me. So the last offshore wind event that we went through capped off a trilogy of offshore windstorms. It's tapering off, or has tapered off across Northern California. It does continue across Southern California in the form of Santa Ana winds. The PSPS, Public Safety Power Shutoff, start and all clear times were very dynamic in this system as it impacted different parts of our territory at different times as it slid north to south, east of California. We first issued the all clear for locations in the northern part of our territory near the Redding and Shasta areas. This was yesterday afternoon. And then we continue to monitor conditions overnight to eventually postpone and then to eventually cancel some of the PSPS in a few areas, and models did show a decreasing trend in the forecast. By 0800 this morning, we were able to issue all clear conditions for locations in Northern California impacted by this PSPS event. And as predicted, a strong Santa Ana wind event did develop across Southern California. The winds did mix down, blew over the Tehachapi's, and actually mixed down into the southern San Joaquin Valley, and produced considerable outage activity there in some of the agricultural and urban areas in our southern San Joaquin Valley, and that was predicted by our outage modeling. Just to give you some examples of wind speeds, Bakersfield Airport recorded south wind gusts 46 miles per hour, which is quite rare for that area. And a station near the communities of Lamont and Arvin, basically the far south portion of the San Joaquin Valley, recorded gusts near 60 miles per hour. And then one of our weather stations in the Tehachapi's recorded gusts near 70 miles per hour near noon today. And we saw similar wind conditions, if not stronger, develop over Southern California, along with relative humidities in the single digits. So very critical fire weather conditions developing across Southern California today. Across the south portion of the footprint in Kern County, the Tehachapi area, we do expect winds to taper off this evening and overnight, and we'll be monitoring and hawking those winds closely to issue the all clear conditions if and when conditions warrant. I understand this was a challenging week and month for many, including our customers and the data science team, the data science branch of the meteorology team, and others have been studying this past week and this past month to help put this in perspective with history, and I want to share some preliminary analysis with you now. And so on the interagency coordination call that meteorology has during high-risk events with Northern Operations Predictive Services, the lead meteorologists, who do a fantastic job up in Redding, indicated that they study basically the wind patterns at Redding Airport throughout its entire history that weather station's been there back to 1986. And for these specific events, what they're looking at is northerly winds. What is the north wind doing at Redding? And so over the past 30 years, in the month of October, they counted the number of days that Reading had observed a wind gust over 40 miles per hour. And what they found is that prior to this year, the maximum number of days where Reading exceeded 40 miles per hour was 3. So 3 days prior to 2019. In 2019, we observed in the month of October 6 days where maximum wind speed in Reading was over 40 miles per hour, so record easily smashed. The other side of the coin is the strength, right? In addition, they looked at northerly winds in Reading and their relative strength. So the peak previous record at Reading they observed was 52 miles per hour, which was recorded on December 30th, 2014. And that record was easily smashed on Saturday night, October 26, when Reading recorded a peak gust of 66 miles per hour. Analysis also that I've seen from others, as well as our team, suggests that the October 26, 27 event was stronger than the October 8th and 9th, 2017 event, and we all know what happened there, and likely was the strongest in years based on some of our analysis looking at the pressure differential between Reading and Sacramento. We call that the pressure gradient. That was observed to peak at 10.6 hectopascals or millibars, sorry to throw out meteorological jargon, but essentially when you look at the historical record that and calculate the return period of such an event, it ends up being a 1 in 15 year windstorm event. Although this event will soon end and we don't see any events on the horizon, our work on the meteorology team does not stop. So we will need to continue to work on our meteorological sections of the CPUC report that are due 10 days after every PSPS event is closed. And we'll also be evaluating damage reports as they come in from the field to put that in perspective with some of the wind gusts that were observed and learn any lessons there to apply moving forward. We don't see any rain in the foreseeable future. It looks like a ridge of high pressure will be parked over California for the next 7 to 10 days. However, right now we're not seeing any offshore wind events either, which is a good thing. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Keith.
Thank you. Can I ask Mark Quinlan, our incident commander, to come up?
Thank you, Keith. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Quinlan. I am the incident commander for the public safety power shutoff events from both October 26th and October 29th, and I'm here to provide an operational briefing. As I've mentioned in past press conferences, we realize how much an inconvenience it is to our customers to experience power outages. It's also an inconvenience for the local agencies and the county agencies. Sincerely apologize for that inconvenience. Happy to report that over 6,300 of our personnel, along with 800 mutual assistance crews that we asked the industry to help support us, who arrived on the system over the last week, have been helping us. We've been working real hard to get your lights back on today, and we've been pretty successful. We'll get into the numbers in a moment. As Scott mentioned, our objective has always been to identify scope based on weather conditions and do whatever we can to reduce that scope as it gets closer to the time where we believe the severe weather will occur. And this event was no different. And fortunately for us, we were able to de-scope our footprint of the event. Footprint is the geographical area of where we anticipated winds that were very dangerous and could potentially cause wildfire ignitions. We were able to monitor that in real time, and we noticed an improvement in our weather conditions, which translated into the operations units being able to reduce scope. So we actually were able to avoid shutoffs in their entirety in Alameda, Contra Costa, Humboldt, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, San Mateo, and Siskiyou counties. So that was very good for us. In addition, all clear was issued for all of the other counties that still remained in scope. We were able to reduce the scale of those events as mentioned. The all clear was issued this morning at about 0800, which was really good news for us. we had the opportunity to leverage a full 12 hours of daylight to perform our helicopter patrols. I've mentioned in previous briefings that the most effective way we patrol our system is via air. So we were able to have a full day of restoration activity, and we were able to drive those numbers down. The only county that still is under public shutoff is Kern. They were originally supposed to be in the shutoff state with an all clear from a weather perspective expected to come tomorrow, October 31st at 0600 in the morning. But again, weather conditions improved, and we were able to pull that forecasted all clear time in to about 11 p.m. this evening, and we actually got the all clear for the northern portion of that shutoff zone shortly after about 2:30. So we've already begun restoring people in Kern County. And of note, just wanted to mention that we are coordinating with Kern County and with Southern California Edison because they also serve customers in that county, and they're also in the process of executing a PSPS event. So we want to be very clear with the local community down there, and that will continue until we're out of the event. After that weather passed this morning, when we got the all clear, we went full resources out into the field, started doing some more inspections, and we found some more damage. We're up to 83 cases of damage. This includes trees falling into lines, broken poles, other hazards, tree branches tangled in the wires that we've been able to remove and make repairs on. And we expect that number to rise as we continue our inspections. You can see a couple of examples behind me on the slide deck here that shows you some of those damages. And if those damages happen, there's typically an arc flash event that occurs as that contact's made with the ground or foreign objects. And that's what causes sparks and arcs. And if that happens during a high wind period, it really raises the opportunity and the likelihood that that spark turns into a fire ignition. And when you're talking winds upwards of 60, 70 miles per hour, those fires can take off very, very quickly and become very large, very fast. And that's exactly what the whole program is trying to avoid. So we're glad to see that this was shut off in this area at the time. In terms of current outage information, this morning we began the day with roughly 365,000 customers that were out of service. We have restored roughly 242,000 customers just before this briefing. I'm sure that's down from there. We've been restoring at a very aggressive rate as all of the reports are coming back in. And we expect to restore roughly 75% of the customers that were impacted by the end of the day today, and the remaining 25% by the end of day tomorrow. So that's our starting point. If we can pull that in, we will absolutely do that. There is a risk that there are smaller areas of the system that may have experienced damage, like the ones that were shown on the slide. What happens in those cases, we isolate the system and we try to open our devices and tighten that outage up to as small a zone as possible and restore other undamaged portions of the system through our resources if we have the ability to do so. Our resources then continue patrols of other parts of the system, and then we get construction crews to come in behind them and make the permanent repairs. That's a lengthier process than the patrols, so we do both at the same time. I don't want anyone thinking that we patrol 100% of the system first and then come back and then make all the repairs. It's done in unison, and as such, we usually are able to restore everyone and repair everybody at about the same time. In terms of outage totals right now, right before the briefing, we had 136,000 customers out of service across the entire PG&E footprint for all causes. That includes PSPS, non-PSPS, weather-related events, and other causes. From a PSPS perspective, we were down to 123,000 customers, and we expect that to continue to drop. We still have a little daylight left, and once the daylight goes away and we ground all of our helicopters, we can still do some work on the ground up until the evening. In terms of community resource centers, there were nearly 80 of them that were opened for this event to support the local communities. We still have 49 of them open at this time, and the hours of operation are 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening. We did work as we restored service to various counties. We did check in and have a call with the county and came to an agreement that the Community Resource Center was no longer needed, and then made the joint decision to close it down. And whatever materials that were there, like the food that's provided or the water or the ice or things like that, if there was a need to move that to another community resource center or perhaps stand up another one in an adjacent county, we took that advantage. And if that wasn't available, then we looked to donate all those materials to local community type of organizations. So that was our plan there. Just to reinforce on the customer resource centers, they do provide restrooms, bottled water, ice, blankets, food, and the ability to recharge electronic devices for up to 100 customers at a time. We've gotten good penetration there. A lot of customers have been stopping by to take advantage of those services. And you can find the locations of them at pge.com/PSPS updates. We have a whole list of where they exist. So those customers that won't be restored by the end of day today and will go into tomorrow, it's important to know where they are still active. So in closing, I just want to let our customers know that understand that the prolonged outage presents a hardship. We have a bias towards safety. Apologize for that hardship. Many of our employees and our friends and families are experiencing same. We're not immune from that. We're going through this together. We're working very, very hard, and just appreciate your understanding. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our President and Chief Executive Officer of PG&E Corporation, Bill Johnson.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Johnson, President and CEO of PG&E. As you've heard from Scott and Mark, it appears like this string of extreme weather events, which has plagued us much of this month, has come to an end, at least for now, and hopefully for at least the next week, and I think we can all be grateful for that. I know I am. Everybody wearing these good-looking vests is. And thousands of our colleagues and public agency partners who are working across the state to manage these extreme conditions. And certainly our customers should be grateful for this. As you just heard from Mark, we've restored a large number, but we still have a number to go, and we're working hard on that. Some of these customers are without gas, particularly in the area of the Kincaid fire. Our hearts go out to the people in that area, and we will reconnect you as soon as CAL FIRE tells us it's safe to do so. And like all of you, we have been watching what's happening in Southern California with those Santa Ana winds. We're in touch with our fellow utilities there, and we'll give them whatever assistance we can. They're also responding to these events by using public safety power shutoffs as a protective measure. I saw a media report on the Getty fire from the Los Angeles Fire Department that said the fire was caused when a tree branch outside the right-of-way broke and blew into an energized line, arced, dropped the spark on dry brush, and caused the fire. And that's, of course, the exact kind of situation we are trying to prevent with these public safety power shutoffs. We also understand that the quick succession of these weather events has meant some of our customers have been out of service for 5 days. That's a hardship by any measure. And we encourage anyone whose power is still out to take advantage of our community resource centers, which will remain open as long as necessary, as long as people need them. These centers have bottled water, ice, blankets, food, electronic device charging, and our staff there will know the latest up-to-date information about where things stand. So if we can help you with any of that, please go there. So every day of this fire season, including today in Southern California, brings further proof, as I said last night, that we're living through extraordinary times here in California. And as much as we might want to think that we're living through a single awful episode and that once it passes, everything will return to normal, that's not likely to be the case. The risks of this and future fire seasons will likely continue to go up, not down. And what we have to do as Californians is find ways to manage those risks and stay safe as conditions change. And that's why we do these power shutoffs. And as long as they may remain the best tool that we have to keep people safe and our communities safe, they're the tool we will use. Now, we've gotten a lot better at these things as this season has gone on. We're learning how to implement new strategies, such as segmenting or dividing our system, building resilience zones, those kind of things to narrow the impact and the scope of future events and bring back service quicker. Over the course of October events, we found ways to improve our performance in many areas. We fixed our website and notification. We improved our communications with state, county, local governments, and tribal governments. Perhaps not perfect, but certainly much improved. And after each one of these shutoffs, our thousands of field crews did heroic work to patrol and inspect our distribution and transmission lines, now at a total covering the circumference of the Earth several times over. So we'll continue to work to get even better and to find new ways to improve our system so that we can make these shutoffs as rare as possible as the technology allows. Now, we're not done, as Mark said. We still have crews out there working hard and safely, and we won't stop until every last customer is back in service. And as we finish these tasks, please let our employees in the field do their jobs and be safe. They're here to help you and your neighbors. Some of them are your neighbors, and should never be the target for anybody's anger. You might also see some of those mutual aid crews that Mark mentioned, more than 800 people from around the country here helping us, far away as Florida and New Jersey, and I want to thank them in particular for interrupting their lives and their families to come here and help us. So to everyone in Northern and Central California, from all of us here at PG&E, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your patience, your understanding. Thank you, our state partners with Cal OES, Cal Fire, Cal ISO, the CPUC, and the county, local, and tribal agencies. Thanks to the first responders who are fighting those terrible fires. And thanks to the men and women of PG&E who have worked so hard to restore service to more than 1 million customers in this part of the state. So let's all hope we can get back to normal soon and stay that way for a long while. And with that, we'll take your questions.
We'll start with Dan.
Bill, you had a filing in federal court today in which you talked about incidents during the October 9th event, the blackout, of trees in the power lines, other damage to the infrastructure. What's the bottom line on that? What is the message that we can take from that filing?
That there were many instances where we found debris in the lines, damage to the lines, each of which could cause a potential fire. That's exactly what happened in the Getty fire in Southern California. You know, the judges asked us to report on these things as we go along, so we were responding to that. But I think what you can conclude is, you know, hard to prove a negative. Can you prove that we would have had a fire that we didn't? But there's certainly every indicia that fires would have been caused by these results.
My follow-up is that you're hearing it. There's so much anger and frustration and fear on the part of consumers. Number one, I wonder whether that affects you personally. And number two, what is your message to people who are actually thinking about leaving the state?
Well, to the first part, it does affect me personally. I hate for customers to be mad. My job is to serve customers and make them happy. So when you don't do that, that is never good. These things present hardship, all kinds of things, but there's something worse than that. And we've seen worse. We've seen catastrophic wildfire with death and destruction around it. And so really, at this point, we have to do everything we can to prevent that. This situation will improve, and it will improve over time. And I don't think anybody in California should leave because of it, but I think we all got a role to play in minimizing this risk.
Dan?
Bill, the website yesterday did not keep up. It was the word from press people said that Marin was off the list for future shutoffs, and you went in and put in your address tool, and it still said you were off and going to be off. And you talked about that the reason for the reimbursement for the October 9th was due to website issues. Well, here you had people in Marin planning for another 48 hours of being without power and only to be restored at 8 o'clock. Because the website was not updated. The maps were not updated. So what do you say to those people? Are you thinking of increasing the dates for reimbursement because the website can't keep up?
Well, I'll say two things and then let Mr. Quinlan answer this, but I'm glad we were able to get these people on sooner and maybe take them out of the scope when weather conditions improved. And I think there's a significant difference between the website crashing on multiple occasions and having maybe a little difficulty on one of the most complex operating days I've seen in my 40 years in the business. So Mr. Quinlan can pick up on that.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Just to put a finer point on it, and the website didn't have the same problems that it did on the 9th. You know, those problems were just, you know, the website crashing and stuff. We've been watching the website performance right in the command center of the Emergency Operations Center to make sure that, you know, it was running the whole time, and we had our IT officer monitoring that. So from a systems perspective, no issues. I think the point of your question is about the information on the website that was there with specific regard to Marin and the inaccurate information that was unintentionally provided to customers that live in that county, as well as the agencies. And the cause of that is really due to the transmission system configuration in the area. As Bill mentioned, extremely complex operational day yesterday, with customers being shut down, other customers being returned to service, and then complicating matters, the active Kincaid fire and all of the transmission assets that run through that fire footprint and adjacent to the footprint that when in normal service would not have been or presented such an operational challenge to get customers back in lights. So the information was driven by our thought to be able to restore service through transmission and not being able to once we didn't have those paths available until we got all clears to restore. So sincerely apologize to those customers for the misinformation. Very clear that counties and customers make arrangements based on what we tell them. Crystal clear on that, and we try as hard as we can to be as accurate as we can. So apologize that, and we're looking at exactly what happened, how we can prevent it in future events.
And Mark, maybe add a little color commentary. We've had zones before for previous PSPSs, but how many different areas were we looking at with different timing?
Yeah, we had 11 zones associated with this last event on the 29th. I believe we had 6 or 7 zones on the event associated with the 26th. The reason that we do the zones is to be able to identify the areas of impact. The more zones we have, the more flexibility we have as it relates to monitoring weather conditions, adjusting timelines, bringing things in and out of scope.
But if people can't rely on the information on the website, then what are they to do? Right? You admit that it was inaccurate. It didn't catch up. This is the third one since you said it would. Yes, the website didn't crash, but the information is still inaccurate, and people are making plans, getting generators, going out to buy more canned food. They're just out of luck.
Yeah, as stated, Marin was the exception when you look at all of the 30-plus counties that were interrupted. So big improvement from the last time, but always an opportunity to improve, and we pledged to do that.
But no reimbursement for them.
Can't comment on that, and I'm here to talk about the operations, but just can't comment on that right now.
What about you, Bill?
I'm thinking about wrapping this effort up, and we can talk about those things later. We're here to wrap this event up.
Christy?
Yeah, there's video out there of a sparking power line at Bethel Island. There was a fire out there on Sunday. It's believed that it possibly could be linked to the fire. And then there was a second one in Oakley, another fire. Do you all have comment on this?
We filed electric incident reports on both of those, which are based on how many media reports we get. We did have assets in the area, and we know that the local fire departments are investigating those, and that's what we know at the moment.
But they seem to believe that it may be tied to those power lines. And were they, I'm assuming they were energized, were those not part of the PSPS?
Don't have that information at this time to speak to it. But to Bill's point, when we have assets that are involved, we file that form through our protocols. We don't really speculate on causation. Our opportunity and our focus is really cooperating with the agency who has lead on the investigation. We support that, and then we just focus on operational type of issues. So too soon to tell.
Hi, Taylor Bisacki with Cron 4. Just to piggyback off of the earlier, I know that you guys will be reimbursing people for the October 9th incident. $100 for residential communities and $250 for businesses. But my first question is, where does that number come from? Because obviously people have had a lot of losses during this time, and $100 barely gets you to the grocery store. So that's just the first part of my question.
Yeah, so it came as a request from the governor after that October 9th event, so we are, in essence, responding to the request of the governor.
Just for $100?
We're responding to the request from the governor.
Okay, and as a follow-up to that, are you foregoing any incentives for executives at this time?
There is no executive incentive program this year, so we've forgone them for the whole year.
So two questions for you. One, can you speak to the number of customers that are impacted both from the gas side and also the electric side within the Kincade fire?
Kincade fire footprint from an electric perspective is less than 1,000. Those numbers continue to change because the fire grows in size, scale each evening, and we get updated GIS perimeter data from CAL FIRE. And so when we see that encroach upon our assets, that changes the number. But as of this afternoon before the press conference, it was roughly 1,000 customers directly impacted within the perimeter. There's some what I'll call adjacent impacts and zones where we can't get in to patrol our stuff due to firefighting efforts. From a gas perspective, I believe the number was north of 20,000 gas customers lost service as we shut in, which means turning off the gas for safety. And we did that successfully. And some of the mutual assistance crews or mutual aid crews that we talked about are actually some gas crews as well to help us do relights when it's safe to do so.
And so in terms of power outages in Windsor, Healdsburg, Santa Rosa, do you have a number of customers that are impacted, maybe not within the fire footprint itself, but indirectly
Sonoma County-wide?
That?
Yeah, Sonoma County was still quite a bit large in terms of, I have some numbers here. I can only speak to them at a county level. So Sonoma County, at the time of this briefing, was roughly 40,000 customers that were still out. So that's across the whole county. And that encompasses not only the Kincade fire footprint, the direct impacts with the loss of structure, things of that nature, but also just areas of the territory that we still haven't restored yet. We're still out there right now patrolling.
And for the areas that are getting repopulated today, do you have an estimate of when they might get their power restored?
No, I do not. I haven't heard about the repop plan or the timing of same, but that'll absolutely be our focus after we wrap this PSPS event up. We have an incident command team that stood up out there in the area for the fire, and they are working directly with CAL FIRE on the coordination efforts. So I don't have that at this time, unfortunately.
On the gas front, just to add to the gas front, so the customers that would have had their gas shut in, they will need to be actually present so someone can come in and conduct a gas check and then relight their service. So they will need to be there for us to be able to do that.
How long do you estimate that to be with 20,000 customers?
We'll need to get back to you on that, but I would say several days.
And then separate question, there's been some discussion on social media by customers saying that they think it's outrageous that PG&E is selling generators at a time during a PSPS event directly from the website and potentially profiting from people buying generators through the website. How would you respond to that?
Sure, let me take that one. So PG&E provides a third-party website where other vendors can come. We provide that as a resource. We make no money on it. It's a pass-through to other vendors to try to provide people the opportunity to know what they need. We make no money on that.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, it's kind of opening up the market and trying to help customers link where can I go if I'm interested in a generator. Along the generator front, we have a massive amount of generators that we've deployed to help life safety services all over the service territory. Worked very closely last night, all night with Cal OES to put the 2 evacuation sites associated in Lake County from the fire, put them on generation, worked with their water department for lift stations and things like that to ensure that those essential services were there. So large generator installation effort from PG&E to help the communities. I'm not aware of any type of social media thing that you mentioned.
People were just saying optics-wise, it might be a little off at this time.
It's been available for quite some time. We make no money on it. It's to be able to provide third parties the opportunity to provide customers something that they need.
Speaking of the Kincaid fire, when that happened and the jumper cable was discovered on the ground, you guys put out a release saying that that transmission tower had been inspected this year as part of the wildfire safety inspection program. Can you say when it was inspected, how it was inspected, by air, by on the ground, and can you provide documentation of the report? Did you find anything wrong with that tower at all?
Yeah, I can take that. It was inspected by climbing early in the year, maybe February, followed by a drone inspection later in the year within the last couple months. There were 5 maintenance items found. 4 of them were repaired. They were all minor, and the 5th one was the tower needs painting. We didn't get around to painting it.
Can you provide documentation of that report?
I don't know if we do that or not.
Yeah.
We'll think about that.
That'll be part of what we submit to the CPUC as part of our report.
So that's no until it's submitted?
We have a 10-day report we need to file with the CPUC for each PSPS event.
And any history problems on that tower prior?
We're focused on the event in front of us. We're trying to get customers restored back in line. So that'll be part of our review. Christian, you got anything? Anybody else? Going once, going twice. All right, thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, 5:30.
Going home.